She cut her hair, hid her face, and buried her true identity, all to save her family from bankruptcy. In a world ruled by men, where doors stayed shut for anyone poor, female, and invisible, she created a new version of herself, a perfect assistant. Cold. Competent. Trustworthy. What she didn't expect was to become the right hand of the most feared CEO in Seoul. And even less, that he would begin to trust her blindly. What started as a desperate lie soon turned into a silent, intense, and dangerous connection. But no truth can stay hidden forever, and when the mask fell, their empire began to shake. He would discover that the man he trusted was actually the woman his heart had already chosen, behind the biggest lie he'd ever believed. Winter arrived early that year in Seoul. The streets were covered in a dry, gray cold, the kind that perfectly mirrored what Eun felt inside. The oldest daughter of a family that once had pride and stability, she now faced a reality that crushed her youth day after day: poverty, desperation, and the heavy burden of saving the ones she loved. Her mother, once full of life and dreams, now spent her days bedridden with a degenerative disease. The medications cost more than any part-time job could cover. Her little brother, Dong-hwan, only 14, was starting to fall in with the wrong crowd. And the debts. They knocked on the door like a daily sentence, with cruel collectors threatening to take even the house they lived in. In the middle of it all, Eun, despite every closed door, never stopped trying. She handed out flyers in train stations, cleaned offices in secret during the early morning hours, and posted job ads around the city. It was during one of those walks that she saw it, a nearly faded ad taped to a rusted pole, seeking assistant for internal development. High pay. Men only. Discretion required. Hiring company, K-Tech Industries. K-Tech was a powerhouse, one of the biggest companies in Korea. Led by a CEO known for his genius, cold heart, and obsession with perfection, young Min-ho. Young, a billionaire, and completely untouchable, Min-ho rarely appeared in public. His department was sealed off with strict protocols, and no one got in, unless handpicked by him. Eun knew she'd never be accepted, not with her last name, not in that second-hand uniform. But when she saw the salary, enough to cover her mother's treatment and keep the roof over their heads, something inside her shifted. And that's when the lie was born. For days, she studied how men moved, how they spoke, even how to hide the softness in her face. She cut her hair at home, alone, with a rusty pair of scissors. She borrowed her missing brother's documents and created a simple fake ID, Han-jun. On the day of the interview, she wore a suit borrowed from her uncle. The shirt was too big. The shoes hurt. But her eyes held a kind of determination no resume could ever show. At K-Tech's front desk, the gap between her world and theirs was blinding. Mirrored elevators. Flawless receptionists. Sharp suits and confident strides. Eun, or rather, Han-jun, was just another face in the crowd. But fate stepped in. At the end of the hallway, just when she was about to give up, chaos broke out. A worker spilled hot coffee on an expensive tablet and ran off in panic. Without thinking, Eun grabbed the device and fixed the issue on the spot, using a shortcut she'd learned from helping a friend who worked in IT. She had no idea she was being watched. From a glass office above, CEO Min-ho saw everything. Intrigued, he asked for the young man to be brought in. The rest felt like a dream: a short interview, direct answers, and one unexpected comment. "You don't seem impressed by this place." "Being impressed doesn't pay the bills, sir." The following week, Han-jun was officially hired as the CEO's personal assistant. But that was only the beginning. The lie had become a shield, but also a prison. Every day would be a test. And every false word, another crack in the secret she had to protect with her life. What? Eun didn't know. Was that she was about to live a story that would forever change the corporate world of Seoul and the heart of a man who never believed in love. The K-Tech Industries skyscraper pierced Seoul's skyline like a spear made of glass and steel. Inside, spotless hallways and silent elevators moved workers like pieces on a cold chessboard, where emotions were a luxury and efficiency was the only currency that mattered. Boon, now known as Han Jun, felt her heart race with every step on the 27th floor, the CEO's floor. People said only a few had access to him, and those who did were never quite the same afterward. He was called a man of ice. Cold. Unforgiving. But brilliant. And the reason the company ruled the market. So far, her disguise was working. No one suspected that the quiet young man with soft voice and calm eyes was actually a woman. But the stress never stopped. Even using the restroom was a military operation. Her dorm was shared with other trainees, so she had to wait for everyone to fall asleep before changing clothes, sleep in uncomfortable men's clothes, and wake up before sunrise to hide every trace of femininity. Then came the test. During a staff meeting, one of the company's partners was accused of copying internal software. The CEO, Ji-hoon Kang, ordered an investigation. To everyone's shock, he pointed directly at Han Jun, the quiet trainee with quick reports and strange calmness. "You. Come with me," his voice boomed across the room. Inside the dark limo, the air was thick with tension.
Ha!
Boon wondered if he had found out her secret. Her body shook inside, but her face, trained by fear, stayed calm. "You don't look nervous," he said, giving her a sharp glance. She bowed slightly. "I'm focused on the task, sir." Her first mission was more dangerous than she imagined. Ji-hoon took her to the office of the partner company.
Ha!
Boon had to go in as an observer and secretly gather proof of corporate spying, something that could lead to a huge scandal or even jail. Alone, she faced hostile programmers, copied sensitive data, and dodged suspicious questions. At one point, a guard almost locked her in a room. He looked her up and down and said, "You look too soft for this department." She gave a shy smile and replied, "I'm smarter than I look." Later that day, she handed the flash drive to Ji-hoon in the car. He took it silently. But before leaving, he looked at her for a second longer than needed. "You surprise me, Han Jun." It was the first time he said her name. After that, the looks began. Ji-hoon, always cold and distant, started watching her closely. Gave her harder tasks. Invited her to more meetings. One night, when most staff had gone home, he appeared beside her desk. "Why do you work so hard?" She paused. "Someone's waiting for my help. I can't fail." He stared at her for a long moment. "The most dangerous people I've met had that same look." But with the CEO's growing trust, came danger. A high-ranking staff member, Min Seo-jin, daughter of one of the company's top investors, started to get suspicious. Arrogant and always surrounded by followers, Seo-jin saw Han Jun as a threat to her special access to Ji-hoon. She had tried to get close to the CEO with charm, money, and power. Nothing worked. Seeing a low-level trainee getting private meetings with Ji-hoon made her furious. She began following.
Ha!
Boon quietly. Set up traps. Dropped papers in the men's restroom, hoping Han Jun would show up. Tried to catch her in awkward situations. One time, Seo-jin almost caught her changing in a back storage room.
Ha!
Boon escaped by seconds, heart pounding, sweating cold. Every day, the lie felt heavier. The risk of being exposed never stopped. But she couldn't turn back. Her mother's life depended on it. And now, something even more dangerous was starting to grow. The CEO's eyes were no longer just professional. Days went by. And Han Jun, or rather,
Ha!
Boon, became more essential with each report. Every action plan. Every meeting she handled with quiet intelligence and sharp precision. The CEO, Ji-hoon, known for trusting no one, had stopped making decisions without first asking the opinion of that strange, quiet assistant who barely spoke, but saw things no one else did. On the 27th floor of K-Tech, where the air was always cold and the windows reflected the city like they were stuck inside an aquarium, something began to shift. Ji-hoon started watching Han Jun differently. First, during moments of silence, noticing how the assistant always avoided physical contact, looked away when stared at, and never joined social gatherings. Then, the details, the voice that sometimes slipped into a higher pitch. The careful way of crossing legs, the instinctive gesture of covering the chest when startled. Ji-hoon wasn't just any man. His mind was trained to detect patterns, flaws, inconsistencies. And Han-jun was a collection of tiny secrets that didn't quite fit. One afternoon, in a rare moment,
Ha!
Boon let out a sneeze, high-pitched, soft, almost feminine. Realizing it, she quickly turned to the wall and faked a cough. Ji-hoon, who was signing a contract nearby, paused his pen for half a second. He didn't say anything. But he didn't forget either. That week, they were sent to Busan for a business merger. Company policy had them share the same car, and, to her surprise, the same hotel floor. As always, Ji-hoon remained cold. But their silences started to feel heavy, like every pause was saying more than words ever could. During a dinner with shareholders, one director made a passing comment. "This young man has very refined manners. Seems more like someone from the elite than a trainee."
Yeah.
Another added. "Almost too delicate, don't you think?" Ji-hoon looked at Han-jun. She gave a shy smile and lowered her eyes. But inside, her heart pounded like a war drum. Later, in the hotel lobby,
Ha!
Boon handed her ID badge to the front desk. Without noticing the corner of a clothing tag sticking out from the blazer, a Women Hess brand label. Ji-hoon, waiting on the couch, noticed the detail. Another clue. The next morning, Ji-hoon showed up at her hotel door with a new schedule. She took a while to answer. When he entered, the room had clothes lying around, and a small pouch on the floor with tweezers, foundation, and pink lip balm. Her face went pale. "Are these yours?" he asked. "They're my sister's. I borrowed her suitcase." He didn't say more. Just looked at her. Inside, Ji-hoon was putting the pieces together. Back in Seoul, the tension grew. During a meeting, Ji-hoon stopped her mid-presentation. "Why do you never take off your blazer?" "It's summer, Han-jun. It's a habit. I get cold with the AC." "Strange. No one else does." "Maybe. I was born in the wrong body," she said, almost like a joke. The room laughed. But Ji-hoon didn't. His eyes were far too serious for jokes. That night, he went down to the confidential archives and pulled up Han-jun's employment file. It was spotless. Too spotless. Generic references. No photo on file. All paperwork manually approved by security, who trusted any recommendation from the CEO. Ji-hoon closed the screen. Took a deep breath. And muttered. "You're not who you say you are. But for some reason, I still can't push you away." A few days later, he invited her to a small dinner on the rooftop of K-Tech, a casual event for top executives. Up there, beneath the glowing Seoul skyline, surrounded by towers and cold lights, they stood face to face, alone, for a few minutes. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If you had to lie to protect someone, how far would you go?" "All the way," she said, firm. "Even knowing you might lose everything once the truth comes out?" "Yes. Because sometimes, a lie is the only way to protect a bigger truth." Ji-hoon nodded. And in that moment, something inside him cracked. The wall around the cold, untouchable CEO was beginning to crumble, stone by stone. But he wouldn't confront her. Not there. Not yet. Because part of him didn't want to know. Part of him was afraid of what he'd find. And part of him, the most dangerous part, was already completely drawn to the mystery she was. What had once been just suspicion was now a quiet whisper echoing through the halls of K-Tech, small glances, veiled questions, and an unsettling feeling that something didn't add up. And at the center of it all was her.
Ha!
Boon, hidden under the identity of Han-jun, trapped by a truth that refused to stay buried. It started when an HR employee flagged something unusual. During a routine audit, she noticed Han-jun's file lacked detailed school records and verifiable job references. When she called the listed emergency contact, no one answered. On her screen, a blinking message read, "Incomplete registration. Inconsistent data." The woman didn't report it right away, but over lunch, she whispered to a colleague, "That Han-jun, doesn't something feel off? Even the voice sounds strange." The gossip traveled fast, straight to Min Seo-jin, the arrogant heiress obsessed with the CEO. Determined to destroy the new favorite, she hired a private investigator to follow Han-jun outside of work. One night, Boon was spotted at a Mapo night market, wearing a pink jacket and her hair down. The investigator's photo captured her exhausted face. As she bought medicine and groceries for her sick mother, no suit, no disguise. The picture hit Seo-jin's phone like a bomb. The next morning, she stormed into a boardroom, phone in hand, her eyes blazing. "Do you want to see who the real Han-jun is? Look at this." But Ji-hoon cut her off, his voice ice cold. "Trying to prove a lie with a blurry photo is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Don't drag personal drama into my company." Seo-jin stormed out in fury, but the damage was done. Rumors spread through K-Tech like wildfire. Boon felt it instantly, the changed stares, the whispers that trailed her steps. She knew the end was near. At home, her mother's health declined. Medicine ran out. Even with K-Tech's salary, the money was no longer enough. Guilt weighed on her chest like lead. That night, sitting alone on the company's rooftop, staring down at Seoul's endless lights, Boon cried for the first time in months. Not because of the lie, but because, for the first time, she wanted to stay. She wanted Ji-hoon to know who she really was. She wanted to tell him everything. But fear held her back, fear of seeing the same disgust in his eyes that she had seen in so many others. How do you tell the truth to the only man who's ever trusted you completely? But fate doesn't wait for hearts to be ready. Days later, during a corporate event at the Gangnam Financial Center, Seo-jin struck again. With a microphone in hand, in front of the press and top shareholders, she delivered her blow with a cruel smile. "Mr. Ji-hoon, what do you have to say about the fact that your personal assistant isn't who he claims to be? That he is actually she?" The room froze. All eyes turned to Boon. Her body trembled. Tears welled up, but she stood tall. Ji-hoon turned to her. 3 seconds of silence passed, feeling like an eternity. Then, he said, "What do I have to say? That for the first time in this company, someone had the courage to break a rule for a greater good. And I admire that." But the press didn't forgive. The scandal exploded online. Headlines dominated the internet. Conservative groups called for an investigation. Shareholders demanded her immediate termination. The lie had finally detonated. And now, she would have to pay the price. So would Ji-hoon. But deep inside both of them, even as the truth burned everything down, something new had been born. Something no rule, no disguise, and no public scandal could ever erase. And soon, that truth would speak louder than any lie. The truth was out. And like every empire built on silence and appearances, the fall was brutal. The press spared no one. CEO protects female employee with fake identity, splashed across every news outlet. Comments poured in accusations of favoritism, betrayal of corporate rules, failure of internal security. Haters claimed he had fallen in love with a fraud. Conservatives demanded the CEO's resignation. K-Tech's stock plummeted. Behind closed doors, the shareholders met in silence. The loudest voice, Mr. Park Do-yoon, Seo-jin's father, made his ultimatum: either this woman is fired and the company's name is cleared, or we pull our capital. Ji-hoon said nothing. But his absence from 3 consecutive board meetings was seen as weakness. For the first time, the CEO seemed to be losing control. That week, Boon didn't go to work. Not by choice. Ji-hoon had asked her to stay away, for security reasons. But she knew, it was a goodbye in disguise. At home, everything began to collapse again. Her mother cried uncontrollably when she learned her daughter had been exposed. Her younger brother faced threats at school. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, interview requests, insults, criticism. Neighbors stared with a mix of pity and scandal.
Ha!
Boone couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every lie she had told, every smile she had received, every look from Ji-hoon that now felt like a fragile memory. One night, sitting in front of the mirror, she wiped off all makeup, tied her hair back, stared at her own reflection for long minutes, and whispered, "I don't regret it. Even if the whole world hates me, I don't regret loving him." Across the city, Ji-hoon also stayed awake. Hours spent alone in his dark office, staring at endless reports. His once unshakable face now shadowed with deep circles under his eyes. The board demanded a public response. But everything in him screamed to protect.
Ha!
Boone. In a rare moment of weakness, he typed her name in a message. "If you want to leave, I'll understand. But if you stay, I'll fight with you." He deleted it before sending. The following week, the final decision came from the top.
Ha!
Boone would be officially terminated. The statement read, "Violation of internal identity and security policy." Ji-hoon signed the document with trembling hands. When she received the letter, she simply closed her eyes and smiled. She had already known. She left home, walked to the K-Tech headquarters one last time. Wearing a plain white blouse, dark slacks, hair loose. Nothing left to hide. At the entrance, Ji-hoon was waiting. No suit. No tie. Just him. They looked at each other, long seconds that were far too heavy to be casual. Then, she said, "Thank you for letting me in. Even if it was only for a little while." He didn't reply. He just watched as she walked away. With each step,
Ha!
Boone felt as if she was leaving behind not just the company, but a piece of herself that would never return. The truth had come. The fall had happened. And now, only the hollow silence of separation remained. But deep inside, among the ruins, something still beat. And this would not be the end. From silence came pain. And from pain, a strength
Ha!
Boone never imagined she had. After the public firing, the cruel headlines, and the storm of online hate,
Ha!
Boone chose to disappear. Not out of cowardice, but out of strategy. She cut off all media contact, deleted her social accounts, and rejected lucrative offers for interviews about the year's biggest corporate scandal. She moved in with her mother's friend, in a quiet village in the northern hills of Seoul, far from the glass towers, cameras, stairs, and the painful memory of Ji-hoon. In solitude, she found pieces of herself she had lost. For the first few weeks, her life was simple, caring for her sick mother, helping her younger brother, cooking, washing clothes. Slowly, questions began to surface. What now? What do I do with the woman I've become? With everything I learned inside K-Tech? That's when she decided to start over. She grabbed an old notebook and began scribbling ideas. She still felt invisible, but carried something no one could take away: knowledge. Experience inside one of the biggest companies in the country. And above all, the courage to do what no one else dared, even if it had been wrong. She returned to studying programming. Took online freelance jobs. 3 months later, she had built a small financial management system designed to help micro-entrepreneurs, especially single mothers and people excluded from the job market. She named the project New Route. The name was simple, but it carried everything she believed. Sometimes you have to completely break apart to grow again. This time, with deeper roots. With the help of a non-profit, she offered the service for free to women in vulnerable situations. Within 3 months, 40 families had reorganized debts, opened small businesses, and gained access to fair credit. The press talked about her again. But now, with a different tone. Former CEO assistant reappears, leading project helping families escape bankruptcy. She gave no interviews. She didn't seek the spotlight. But someone was watching in silence. Ji-hoon. He read every article. Watched every video secretly. He saw how the woman he once helped push away now shone brighter outside the walls of his company than she ever could have inside them. And inside him, her absence cut deeper, like an open wound. The cold armor that once held him together no longer worked. The company's stock had recovered, but the office was lifeless. Contracts, targets, applause from the board, none of it mattered anymore. One day, finding one of his old shirts, folded, with a note from Hoon still in the pocket, something inside him finally broke. You taught me to trust. Even when you didn't know who I really was. He left his office, grabbed his car, and drove without thinking. Through winding hills, checking address after address. Until he found the small house with blue windows. She was on the porch, watering flowers. They locked eyes. Silence. He didn't apologize. She didn't ask questions. She simply smiled, for the first time in months. That night, under the soft lights of the village. They talked as if no time had passed. No suits. No masks. No lies. Just them. And for the first time, she told him everything. The whole truth. What she had done. Why she had done it. How much it hurt to lie to him. And how much she loved every moment by his side. Even while pretending to be someone else. Ji-hoon didn't interrupt. He only held her hand. You lied to deceive me. But I lied to myself. Because I knew. Deep down. I always knew. She cried. But this time, not from shame. Days later, a new headline quietly appeared in the business pages. New Route receives anonymous investment, opens new headquarters in Seoul. The investor was never revealed. But the building's design mirrored the 27th floor offices of K-Tech. And Hoon? She was no longer a shadow. No longer an assistant. No longer a lie. She owned her own name. And him. He was no longer the CEO of an empire. He was just the man who chose to love the truth. Even when it once came dressed as a lie. The New Route headquarters was small but full of life. Tucked between mid-sized office buildings in Hongdae, its interior was bright with wide windows and decorated with posters of smiling women with a bold message, starting over isn't weakness. It's courage. Boon now walked through those halls with her head held high. No disguises. No fear. She was respected by her team, admired by those who knew her story, and, most importantly, proud of herself. She didn't wear heels anymore. She preferred flat, comfortable shoes, ready for the streets where real life happened. Her hair was tied up simply, and she always carried a notebook filled with ideas, doubts, and lessons learned. Nothing in that place was luxurious, but everything was essential. And yet, he was still there. Inside her. The man she had once loved in hiding. The man who made her believe and doubt herself. The man who, in the end, held her hand when everything was falling apart. Ji-hoon hadn't shown up again. No flowers. No promises. But every day, at exactly 10 a.m., someone from his company sent updated reports on New Route. No one knew why. Or who sent them. Until, one cloudy evening, as Boon was about to close the office, an unexpected visitor walked in. Him. Ji-hoon. He wore jeans, sleeves rolled up, simple sneakers. No suit. No bodyguards. Just him. And that same gaze, only now, lighter. You always end your day with ginger tea? He asked, nodding toward the steaming mug on her desk. She laughed softly. With ginger and truth. Nothing else. Mind if I join you? She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. They talked for hours. No tension. No past cutting through the conversation. He told her about the company, the changes, the pressure that almost made him give up. He confessed he had donated part of his shares to social impact funds. That he had stepped down from the board, by choice. That he was tired of feeling like a property of an empire. She listened quietly. Then shared about New Root, the women she helped, the stories that guided her days now. The fear she still felt, but had learned to tame. Sometimes I wonder if any of this would happened if I hadn't lied, she said. And sometimes I wonder, he replied, if I would have ever learned to love, if you hadn't lied. She looked at him. The words weren't sweet or polished. They were real. Then he pulled out a folded envelope from his pocket. You never saw this. What is it? The resignation letter I tore up the day you left. She opened it. It was blank. I wrote 1,000 things, but none of them felt enough. She smiled, gently touching the empty page. Then asked, so, what do we do with all of this now? Ji-hoon looked out the window as light rain began to fall over Seoul. We start again. The right way. No secrets. No masks. But not going back to who we were. Of course not. I never want to be the man I was before you. The following week, he came back. This time, with a resume in hand. I'm looking for a volunteer position. Can serve coffee. Handle spreadsheets. And listen more than I talk. She pretended to review it seriously. Then said, there's an opening for a right-hand man. Pays low, and the boss is demanding. I can handle that. And just like that. No ring. No contract. No cliché ending. They started over. As partners. In life. In purpose. In truth. New Root grew the way things with purpose do, slowly, but with roots firm and deep. It began as a small solidarity initiative in the hills of Seoul, led by a disgraced former employee ignored by everyone. But now, with new partnerships, quiet support from investors, and leadership built on truth, New Root had become a real force. In just 1 year, more than 300 women had gone through its programs, small business owners, single mothers, former prisoners, immigrants. All with one thing in common, they had been invisible their whole lives, until someone said, you can, too.
Ha!
Who now spoke at universities, was invited to panels on women's entrepreneurship. And even received an award from the city of Seoul for social innovation and economic equity. But what moved her most wasn't the spotlight. It was the anonymous hugs at neighborhood fairs, the handwritten notes left on New Root's door, the tea invitations from women whose lives she had helped rebuild. And by her side, quietly, was Ji-hoon. He never went on stage. Never spoke to the press. But he was there, adjusting microphones, setting up projectors, reviewing social banking contracts. Sometimes he volunteered as a tech instructor for evening classes. He drew little attention. But it was impossible not to notice the way he looked at Eun, like a man who knew exactly how hard she had fought to stand where she did. The most symbolic turning point happened on a rainy spring day. New Root was invited to a national social impact forum, sharing the stage with major corporations. It was the first time an organization founded by a woman with no traditional background would be heard at that level. In the audience, government representatives, CEOs, influencers, the press. And among them, without a badge, without any fanfare, was Park Do-yoon. The same tycoon who, a year earlier, had demanded Eun's dismissal. The irony was bitter. But Eun no longer trembled. She stepped onto the stage, took a deep breath, and told her story. No makeup. No cuts. From pain to lies. From lies to downfall. From downfall to rebirth. And from rebirth to transformation. She named women who were now bakery owners, thrift shop founders, salon entrepreneurs. She explained how New Root used technology as a bridge, not a wall. She spoke of dignity. She spoke of care. She ended with a simple sentence, "I lied because no one listened when I told the truth. And today, I'm here to make sure no other woman ever has to lie to be seen." A standing ovation. Even Park Do-yoon, reluctantly, clapped. Ji-hoon didn't. He just looked at her. As he always did, silently. With pride. As the team left the event, journalists surrounded them. Would she enter politics? Open international branches? Write a book? She smiled and said, "Maybe. But first, I need to serve dinner at our community hall. Our night group has a meeting tonight." In a society where appearance and status were still power, Boon had won through the opposite, through simplicity. Through rebuilt truth. Through purpose. And Ji-hoon? He never returned to the K-Tech presidency. But every morning, at 6:30 a.m., he was the first to turn on the lights at New Roots headquarters. And when Boon arrived, he would quietly say, just to her, "Now, the CEO is you." For a long time, Boon thought forgiveness was something you asked for out loud. But over time, and through silence, she discovered that real forgiveness lives in actions. In steady presence. In quiet support. In the way someone chooses to stay, even after making mistakes. That's exactly what she felt every morning when she saw Ji-hoon at the New Root headquarters. He never apologized formally. But he cared for everything with a tenderness no one would ever expect from a former billionaire CEO. He carried boxes. Organized spreadsheets. Poured coffee. And always looked at her as if saying, "I'm still here." But the forgiveness she never expected, and never asked for, came from somewhere else, from the people. One afternoon, while shopping at a street market with her mother, an elderly woman approached. She held a small bag of rice cakes and had tears sparkling in her eyes. "You're that girl from TV, right? The one who pretended to be a man." Boon smiled, embarrassed, ready to step away. But the woman stopped her. "Thank you, for not giving up. For showing us that we can fall, without losing honesty." She handed the bag to Boon and walked away. That night, Boon cried silently, not from pain, but from relief. For the first time, she felt no weight for everything she had endured. Days later, another unexpected event came. Seoul National University, one of Korea's most traditional and elite schools, announced an honorary award for figures who broke cultural and social barriers for the greater good. The name chosen for 2026 was Kang Boon. She would receive the honorary title of Citizen of Social Transformation. In the front row of the ceremony sat Seo Jin. Yes, the same Seo Jin. Much had changed since the days of humiliation and rivalry. After the K-Tech scandal, her father lost his influence. Over time, Seo Jin vanished from the media. But that night, she showed up. After the ceremony, backstage, the two women faced each other. No anger. Just the past. "You won," Seo Jin said, without irony. "It wasn't a competition." Boon replied. "Maybe. But if it was, I still would have lost." They stared at each other for a moment. Then Seo Jin, with the elegance only real failure can teach, bowed slightly. "I'm sorry for trying to destroy you." Boon nodded. "I made mistakes too." "Yes. But you had the courage to fix yours." "I ran away." It was their only meeting. But it was enough. Forgiveness, at last, didn't just come from the public. It came from those who were once enemies. The next morning, Boon got a call. It was Ji-hoon. "We have an invitation." "For what?" "To speak at Parliament." "Politics?" "No. Truth." She laughed. "Then you're coming with me?" "Always." Before cameras, microphones, business leaders, students, and even faces that once despised her. Boon walked onto the stage beside Ji-hoon. She didn't speak about gender. She didn't speak about tech or entrepreneurship. She spoke about starting over. About how the world treats those who make mistakes. About how lies are sometimes built just to survive. But that true transformation never comes from fear, only from the courage to reveal your whole self. She ended with one simple, definitive line: "You may have met the lie I once was, but today, I am the truth I chose to become." And for the first time since her fall, all of Korea applauded. No scandal. No doubt. Just respect. The new beginning didn't arrive with fireworks. No official announcement. No red carpet. It came slowly. In the shape of a simple, lighter routine. It came with the sound of the alarm clock ringing at 6 a.m., with the smell of fresh coffee brewing as Ji-hoon prepared it while Boon reviewed new route's schedule. It came in the calm way. He called her a director in front of the team and "my woman" when they were alone. It came in the respect he showed for her space, and in the silent admiration she carried for him, even without saying it out loud. Boon was no longer remembered for her fall. She was remembered for everything she built after it. New Roots headquarters had doubled in size. A new floor opened for the seed program, aimed at young people aged 16 to 21 who left public school with no job opportunities. There, they learned about finance, basic programming, emotional education, and most importantly, the value of their own voice. Boon made a point to attend every opening class. And in each one, she repeated the same words. Here, no one has to pretend to be someone else to be accepted. Here, you are enough just as you are. Ji-hoon had changed too. The expensive suits were still in the closet, but now they gathered dust. He traded meetings with shareholders for conversations with local entrepreneurs. Learned how to ride the subway. Wrote articles under a pen name about ethical leadership. And secretly funded scholarships for girls who dreamed of leading companies but didn't know where to start. Their love, now public, was still quiet. No grand gestures. No declarations online. But anyone who saw them at a corner cafe, sharing silent glances, or standing in line at the movies holding hands like two teenagers, understood there was something there that needed no explanation. No defense. Only living. One day, during the closing ceremony of the first seed program cycle, a student raised her hand and asked, "Professor Boon, do you regret lying at the start of your story?" The room went silent. She thought for a few seconds, then replied, "Yes. And no." The girl frowned. Boon smiled softly and continued, "I regret it because lying was painful. It pulled me away from myself. But I also understand. I only lied because I believed the world wouldn't accept who I truly was. So more than regret, I forgive the girl I used to be. Because she did the best she could." From the audience, Ji-hoon watched her. As always. Later, as they walked home, he asked, "Do you still feel like you're wearing a mask?" She laughed. "Today? None. And you? Maybe just the tough guy mask. But you see right through me. Because I know you. And I see you." She rested her head on his shoulder. Silence. The city stayed noisy outside. But between them, there was peace. In the end, a new beginning wasn't about going back. It was about building a new present. One where she no longer had to hide. One where he no longer had to control everything. One where love wasn't a risk, but a safe harbor. And so, two hearts once trapped by fear, power, and lies, now walk together. For the first time, free. The end.
Hey, did you like this story? Then hit subscribe to Between Lies and Love so you won't miss the next chapters. Don't forget to like this video. It really helps us bring you more emotional, anime-style K-drama stories. And I want to know, what was your favorite part of this story? What do you think we could do better in the next episodes? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your idea might even show up in the next video. So subscribe, like, comment, and join this family that loves drama, twists, and unforgettable stories.